The cold wind touched her skin like a knife in the dark night. She walked slowly with her child in her arms. Her feet bare, her body shaking, her eyes red not from sleep, but from crying. She had nothing left. No money, no food, no help, no clothes except a small torn cloth wrapped around her baby, who was now silent, not because he was sleeping, but because he had no energy to cry anymore. She looked around the busy street of Earth 47, the human city, full of bright lights, fast machines, and loud sounds. But no one looked at her. She was invisible to them, just another alien, just another beggar with strange skin and sad eyes. She walked past tall buildings and glass shops, where people laughed and ate and wore warm jackets, but she kept walking because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant pain. She saw a food stall on the corner. The smell was strong meat, bread, spices. Her stomach cried, her baby moved. Weakly she knew he needed food now, or he would not wake up tomorrow. She walked up to the stall. The man behind it looked at her and then looked away. She whispered, "Please, I will trade anything for food, just a little for my child." Man frowned. He saw her clothes, or what was left of them, and said, "You have nothing I cannot give away. Food or my boss will fire me." But she opened her hand and offered the last thing she had, her scarf, thin, old, and dirty. But better than nothing, she handed it to him with shaking fingers. "Take it, please, just one piece of bread." He took the scarf, looked at her for a second, then gave her a protein bar, not fresh, not big, but enough. She said, "Thank you." He said nothing. She sat by the wall, fed the bar to her child slowly, piece by piece, her hands cold, her body weaker with every hour. She was not thinking of tomorrow. She was not thinking of herself, only that her baby must live. People passed by, some stared, most did not care. Some children pointed their parents, pulled them away like she was a disease. She did not cry anymore. Not now, not here. Her tears were empty now, dry like the planet she came from, before it was burned, before they ran, before her husband was taken, and she was left alone. Baby slept, his chest moving slowly. She held him close, trying to give her warmth, but she had none left. Her eyes closed for a second, her body leaning against the cold metal wall, and then a voice spoke. Low, calm, strong. "Do you need help?" She opened her eyes quickly, afraid. A human man stood in front of her, tall, wearing a black coat with sharp eyes, not angry, not scared, just quiet. She nodded slowly, not trusting him, not yet, but he did not ask questions. He held out his hand and said, "Come with me, your child needs heat, or he will not make it through the night." She looked at his hand, then at her baby, then at the street behind her, empty and full at the same time. She took his hand and stood slowly, her legs weaky. Walked her to a black car, simple, old, not like the fast-flying cars of the city. He opened the door. She stepped inside, soft seats, warm air. The baby moved for the first time in hours. His hand gripped her finger. She looked at the man, who sat down and started driving, no questions, no words, until they reached a small house outside the city, hidden by trees. He opened the door. She walked in and saw a small fire, a couch, a kitchen. No guards, no tech, no machines, just quiet safety. The man pointed to the couch. "Sit, feed your child. More food is there on the table, water too." She sat down like she had forgotten how to sit. The baby opened his eyes for a second, saw the fire, and smiled a little. Her heart hurt in a new way. She looked up and asked, Why are you helping me? What do you want from me?" The man looked at her and said, "Nothing for now, maybe just your story, and maybe because once I had a daughter and a wife, and I lost them to war, like you lost your world." She looked down and said, "Thank you." He walked away into the kitchen and said, "You can stay tonight. No one will find you here, not if you stay quiet and keep that baby warm." She sat by the fire, holding her baby close. The food tasted like dust and heaven mixed together. She did not know if this was real or a dream or a trap. But for now there was heat, there was light, and there was food, and that was more than she had known in many days. Outside, the wind kept howling, the city kept running, the people kept walking, but in this small house, an alien mother and her child had found something strange, something old, something forgotten, something called hope. The night was quiet but not silent. The baby slept near the fire, breathing slow. The alien woman sat on the floor with a blanket wrapped around her legs. Her eyes moved across the room's soft, light wooden walls. Shelves with old books, nothing shiny, nothing rich, but everything clean and real. She did not trust the peace. Not yet. Peace was dangerous in her. Memory. Peace always came before something bad, before a raid, a scream, a loss. Her hands held her child tighter. Her ears waited for danger, but it did not come. Only the sound of boiling water and the man in the kitchen humming a song with no words. He gave her a bed in the next room. Small, soft, warm. She laid the child down and watched his tiny chest rise and fall slowly. She stayed beside him all night. Not sleeping, just watching, just listening to the house around her. It was still too kind, too safe. In the morning, the man made food again. Bread, eggs, old human fruit. She ate it slow, her eyes always watching his hands, his face, his movements. She had seen humans lie, smile, and then burn everything down, but this one felt different, calm, tired, quiet, not like a soldier, not like a killer, but like something broken trying to stand again. She asked his name. He said it does not matter, not anymore. She asked if he lived alone. He nodded. She asked why. He said, I stopped needing people long ago. She looked around and saw many things, strange things. Parts of machines, broken tech tools from old times, maps of destroyed places. Her heart whispered one word: soldier. There was one door that stayed closed, a metal door at the end of the hallway. It had no handle, just a screen with a red light. She had seen doors like that in the past, in labs and bunkers, in places where no good things waited. She pointed at it and asked, what is inside? He looked at her and said, nothing for you, just memories. She did not ask again, but she kept thinking about it, about the way he looked when he said those words. Not angry, not strict, just sad, very sad. That night she woke up to a sound, a whisper, not loud, not sharp, like a song floating under the floor. Her eyes opened. Her child still slept beside her. She stood up and followed the sound, her feet cold on the floor, her fingers shaking as she moved closer to the metal door. The red light was blinking, now slow, like a heartbeat, like something alive. She leaned close and heard it again. A voice, not clear, but not human, either soft, broken, calling out help, or maybe home. She could not tell. The man appeared behind her, silent as a shadow. She turned fast, her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with fear, but he only raised one hand and said, not tonight. You should rest. She stepped back and nodded. He walked past her, pressed a code into the screen, and the light turned off. The voice was gone. She returned to her room, heart racing, head full of noise. Her child moved in sleep, and she wrapped herself around him like a shield, like a prayer. In the morning, she asked again, what is behind that door? He said, the past. She said, what kind of past? He looked at her and said, one with ghosts. She knew then that this house had secrets, not just small secrets, but heavy ones, the kind that sink into the floor and wait, the kind that whisper at night when the fire dies, the kind that do not want to be forgotten later. She helped him in the garden where he grew real food, carrots, onions, herbs. She asked why he lived so far from the city. He said, because I do not belong there anymore. She said, neither do I. He looked at her and smiled for the first time, not big, not bright, but real. He gave her a small necklace, a simple thing, a metal tag with a symbol she did not know. He said it might help one day if things go bad. She asked what it meant. He said it was from my unit. We saved people, not always, but we tried. She held the tag and wondered what kind of people he used to save and what kind of people he could not. That night the whisper did not come back, but her dreams did, broken dreams of fire and running, and her child being pulled away, and that same door opening to a room full of stars and screams. She woke up sweating, holding her baby so tight he made a small noise, and she kissed his head again and again. In the darkness she whispered a promise to him, no matter what happens, I will never let them take you, not again, not ever. She did not know who they were, not yet, but she felt them coming in the wind, in the earth, in the silence behind the locked door. She knew now that the man had saved them, but she also knew something else. This was not the end of the danger. This was just the breath before the storm, the moment before the truth walks in and asks, are you ready? The sky was gray, the kind of gray that feels heavy, like a warning. Her child sat on her lap, playing with the edge of the old blanket. She watched him smile and felt something strange. Inside her something forgotten, something close to peace, but not quite peace had a price, and she had not paid it, yet the man walked in carrying a small box made of metal, old but clean. He placed it on the table and opened it slowly. Inside were packets of food, not from the market, not from the city. These were labeled with strange codes, military numbers, and unknown seals. She had seen this kind of food once on a human base where no aliens were allowed. He handed her one pack and said, "Warm this for the child, only give him half, for now it is strong, not normal food." She nodded without question, but her eyes stayed on the other packs, wondering where they came from and what he had done to get them. She followed his instructions, warmed the food with the small device he gave her, and watched her baby eat slowly but with new energy, his eyes brighter, his hands less shaky. He even made a sound, a tiny laugh, something she had not heard in weeks, and it broke her heart in the softest way. The man stood near the window, staring at the trees outside, his hand resting on the edge of a dusty frame with a photo inside. A woman, a child, both smiling. She did not ask. She knew grief when she saw it, and he wore it like armor. He spoke without turning around. "Tomorrow, a drone will pass through this zone. They come once every 7 days for scans. They should not detect you if you stay inside and keep low. But do not speak, do not cry, do not move near the window." She felt a chill in her spine and asked, "What if they do detect us?" He turned and said, "Then I will lie and they will believe me, or they will not, and we will run." She nodded again, trying to ignore the shaking in her legs. Her child reached for more food, and she gave him another bite, pretending it was just another day, just another meal in a world that had not been burned. Later that evening, the man showed her how to lock the windows, how to turn off the heat so the sensors could not trace the energy, how to make the house look empty, even when someone was inside. She listened carefully, memorizing every step, because this was survival, and survival was the only thing she still believed in. She asked him how he knew all this. He sat down beside the fire and said, "I used to track people like you, not proud of it, just true." He said, "I thought I was doing the right thing until one day I saw a child with no name burned for nothing, just because he was born where he was born. I left after that and never went back." She looked at him and for the first time felt something stronger than fear. Not trust, not yet, but something like it, something that might grow if given time, if not broken too fast. The next morning came quiet and cold. The man turned off all lights, covered the windows, and placed her and the child inside a closet with soft blankets and a bottle of water. He gave her a small device and said, "Press this if anything changes. I will be near. Do not speak no matter what." She held her child close, listened to his breathing, and waited. Time passed slowly like melting ice, every second long, every sound sharp, her heartbeat louder than ever. She heard the low hum of the drone outside, a vibration that touched the floor and climbed her spine. She did not move. She did not blink. Then silence, then footsteps, the man speaking, calm, slow, answering questions from outside. A door opened, a door closed. Her breath caught and stayed there until finally she heard him tap the closet gently twice, the signal it was safe. She came out holding her baby, who was now asleep again, his skin warm from her body, his chest rising in rhythm with hers. The man looked at her and said, "You did good. Now we wait, and we stay silent until I say otherwise." That night she could not sleep, her mind filled with questions. Why help her? What was he hiding? What would happen if the drones came back with orders, not questions? She walked into the hallway, saw the metal door again, the one with no handle and no sound tonight. She touched it lightly, felt the cold steel against her fingers, felt the past pushing from the other side like breath on her skin. She whispered, not to the door, but to herself, "I need to know, I need to understand before it is too late." Behind her the man spoke without anger, without fear. "Not yet," he said, "but soon, maybe soon, when I trust that you are ready." She turned and saw him standing there in the dark hallway, the light behind him making his face look like stone and sorrow mixed together. She did not ask again, but in her eyes he saw the promise she would wait, but not forever. In that house filled with silence and slow healing, something was growing, not just danger, not just mystery, but connection, something fragile, Something rare, something almost like family, made from ruin, made from fire, made from choices and the hope they might still matter. The sky changed that week, turning darker every evening. The clouds moved like whispers hiding something heavy. The wind spoke less, the nights felt longer. The baby was stronger, now his steps small but steady. He laughed more, held her hand tighter, his body gaining weight, his eyes beginning to glow with soft light, the mark of her kind, a light that once meant life. Now a danger in the world they were hiding, and the man gave them space. But he watched, always quiet, always thinking. His eyes never missed the window, never forgot the door. She saw it in him, a soldier who had stopped fighting with guns, but had not stopped fighting at all. She began to clean the house, not for kindness, but for purpose. She wanted to learn the space, understand the patterns, find the pieces of truth hidden in dust and shadow. It was in the study she found the first clue, an old datapad buried under a stack of rusted tools. She touched the screen and it came alive, no password, no lock, as if waiting for her. The screen showed reports, short and sharp, locations, dates, images, burned cities, names marked as lost names. Like hers, names like her husband's, names like her people. She scrolled down and found maps, each one with red zones circled in bright lines. The red zones were gone, now erased from the star grid, listed as unsafe or classified. She knew them not from records, but from memories. Burned ground, empty skies, cold water full of ash. She had walked through one with her child tied to her chest. One file stopped her breath, a mission log marked with the seal of the Human Federation, under a name she had never heard before. Project Alpha Arc. She opened it and saw images of a ship, not large, not wide, but deep, full of small sleeping pods. Full of children, not just hers, not just humans, but many kinds, side by side like seeds, waiting for a future that never came. She heard a sound behind her and turned fast. The man stood there, watching her, eyes not angry but tired. He walked slowly to the desk, sat down beside her and said, "You were not supposed to see that, not yet." She asked, "What is Project Alpha Arc?" He said, "It was an idea, a chance to save the future before war made it impossible. We collected the last of many kinds, stored them, froze them, hid them, waited for orders. But the orders never came. The war came first, and then everything burned." She looked at the screen again, saw one name at the end of the list, her own child's name listed as failed extraction, and her heart froze. She said, "You were sent to take him." He said, "Yes, and I tried, but by the time I arrived your world was already breaking. I saved one child, then another, and another, but not enough, never enough." She asked how many made it. He said 7 out of 207 who still sleep below this house, where the cold keeps time frozen, where dreams cannot be touched, where hope is sealed in silence. She stood up, walked to the locked door, placed her hand on it, her child behind her, holding her shirt. His eyes glowing in the dim hallway. She turned to the man and asked, "Why save us? Why keep hiding?" He said, "Because someone had to remember what mercy looked like." She asked, "What happens now?" He said, "Now you know the truth. Now you must choose, stay or leave, stay and help, or leave and forget." She did not speak, only looked down at her child, who looked up with trust and wonder and something old in his eyes, something beyond years. That night she stood in the garden while the man watched. From the porch, the stars above, cold and far and full of silence. She thought of her planet, thought of the sound it made when it cracked, thought of the people buried in light, thought of her husband and the day he disappeared into fire. She whispered to the wind, "I am not done, I am not broken, I am still here." She walked back into the house, touched the wall near the locked door, and said, "Open it. Not tomorrow, not later, now." Man looked at her and saw the truth in her voice, not fear, not doubt, only fire. The same fire he once saw in a mother who handed him her child through a gate before the bombs came down. The same fire he had seen in his own wife before the sky turned red and the scream stopped. He walked to the wall, pressed a code. The door opened, slow, cold air moved through the hall like breath from another world, and inside was nothing at first, just darkness and the hum of machines. But then the lights blinked on one by one, revealing rows of pods, small, glowing, humming, alive. She Stepped inside, held her child close, and saw the faces behind glass. Young, old, different, but the same in one way. They were not lost, not yet, not while she stood there, not while the man stood beside her, not while the stars still burned. This was not the end, it was the beginning of the truth, and she was ready to carry it. The cold air wrapped around her like a question, sharp and quiet. The hum of machines echoed through the room like a memory, breathing in the dark. The pods stood in rows, each one holding a child frozen in time, their faces calm, untouched by fear, untouched by pain, sleeping while the world outside burned and forgot. She walked between them slowly, her steps careful, her child silent in her arms. Looking at the glass, his small hand reaching out to one of the faces as if he knew them, as if something inside him remembered what her mind could not. The man stood behind her, quiet eyes watching everything but saying nothing, his breath slow, his hands behind his back, like a soldier waiting for an order that never came. She turned to him and asked, "Why did you not wake them?" He said, "Because there was nowhere safe to send them. To wake them is to bring them back to a world that may still want them dead." She looked back at the pod, saw names on each one, names written in many languages, names of forgotten worlds, names that once meant joy to mothers who never made it to safety. Her throat tightened, her knees weak, her heart heavy like stone under water. One pod was different, not by design, but by feeling the air around it colder, the lights dimmer. A warning flashed in soft red letters, unknown anomaly. She placed her hand on the glass, and the pod glowed for a second. Just a second, but enough to show a child with eyes like hers, and skin not exactly hers, not exactly human either. Something mixed, something new. She stepped back, eyes wide, heart racing. She turned to the man and asked, "What is this? Who is that?" He looked at the pod, then at her, then down at her child, and said that one was found alone. The ship it came in was broken, no record of origin, no match in the system. It is not just alien, it is something else, something never seen before. Asked why keep it here, he said, "Because it is alive, because it is scared, and because when I go near it, I feel something I cannot explain. Not fear, not peace, something else, something old." Her child looked at the pod and smiled. Not just a smile of curiosity, but recognition, like meeting a friend from a dream, a friend who had never spoken, but always been there. Her hands began to shake. Her voice soft, she asked, "What does this mean?" The man said, "I do not know, not yet, but I think your child and that one are connected somehow." She sat on the cold floor, the lights buzzing above her, her back against the wall, her child on her lap watching the pod. Without blinking, she whispered stories to him, not for comfort, but for courage. Stories of stars and forests, of rivers on her home world, and the song the sky used to sing before the fire came. The man sat beside her, his voice low, not afraid. "Just honest," he said. "The Federation calls them anomalies, anything they cannot control, anything that changes the rules. Your son glows when he sleeps. He learns too fast, he heals too fast. That is why they will come. They always come for what they do not understand." She looked at him and said, "Then we protect them. We protect every child in this room." He nodded and said, "I will help you. I always meant to, but I was waiting for someone brave enough to remind me why." He opened a drawer and pulled out a small black device, round, flat, smooth. He pressed a button, and a map appeared in the air, glowing blue, showing escape routes, hidden paths, old contacts, still loyal places, not yet burned places where the sky might still be kind. He said, "We will need 2 days to prepare, 2 days to pack what matters, 2 days to choose who goes and who waits, because not all pods can move, not all systems can travel again. We must decide with care." She looked at the faces behind glass, saw the dreams frozen in place, and whispered, "We take the youngest first, the weakest first, the ones who would never survive without us." He nodded again, no argument, only respect in his eyes. That night she did not sleep. Her child did, his body warm beside hers, his breathing steady, his light soft. She sat by the pod with the anomaly, watched its glow shift, watched its heart beat beneath the glass, felt her own heart match its rhythm. House above them was still, but outside the wind had changed. It carried a different smell, not fire, not smoke, something colder, something metal, like ships, like soldiers, like eyes that see through walls and call love a weakness. She held her child closer, wrapped them both in silence, and said in her mind, not a prayer, not a cry, a promise, you will not take him from me, you will not take any of them. The man stood by the stairs, his weapon in hand, not raised, not ready to shoot, but ready to stand, ready to fall, if he had to, not for a cause, not for a flag, but for a truth that lived now in the basement, in the quiet breathing of children who had never asked to be heroes. Asterisk. The morning light never came, only a sky filled with gray clouds, hanging low like the breath of something ancient waiting above the house. The air was colder, the trees outside no longer moved with the wind, they stood frozen like guards, watching with eyes unseen. She stood in the kitchen holding a mug of warm liquid, her child wrapped in a blanket, nearby playing with an old spoon, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim room, his laughter soft, his body healthy in a way that frightened her, because health meant life, and life meant they would notice. The man entered quietly, not with the steps of a friend, but with the silence of a soldier, his face calm but sharp. He carried a device not large, but heavy with warning. He placed it on the table and said, they found us. She did not ask how, she already knew. Something had shifted in the air, in the night, in her bones. She looked at him and said, how long? He said, one day, maybe less, maybe hours. He pressed a button and a screen flickered to life, a map showing blinking red dots moving fast, moving toward them. No names, no voices, only motion, like predators that did not stop. She picked up her child, held him close, kissed his head once, not for comfort, not for goodbye, just to say, I am still here, and I will not run unless I carry you with me. The man opened a case hidden in the wall, weapons, small and silent, maps folded in strange shapes, small devices that blinked with blue lights. He handed her one and said, this will jam their scans, but only for a short time. When it stops, we move no matter what. She nodded without fear. Fear had passed. Now there was only purpose, like the blade of a tool, sharp and ready. She asked, what about the children below? He said, I prepared the pods, 3 are ready. We move them tonight, 1 trip only. We cannot carry more. She did not answer. She only walked to the basement, opened the door, and looked at the rows of faces behind glass, breathing but not awake. She walked between them, whispered to each one, not words, but feelings and the promise of return. Her child followed, holding her hand tighter than ever, his steps quiet but strong, his light growing again, as if reacting to the danger, as if warning the world with his heartbeat. She looked at the pod-marked anomaly, the strange child, still asleep, still unknown. She touched the glass and felt a pulse, not mechanical, not artificial, something like trust. Something that said, I hear you, even here, even now. The man called to her from the stairs, his voice firm. It is time. She turned one last time and whispered, you are not alone, not anymore. Then climbed back into the house and began to wrap the child in layers, not to keep him warm, but to keep his light hidden. They waited in silence, the sound of their breaths, the only rhythm in the house. Her eyes on the door, his eyes on the screen, the child between them like a small sun hidden in cloth, and hope. The ground shook, not loud, but enough to feel, enough to know. They were close, machines without wheels, flying low, their scanners sweeping wide. A voice broke the air from outside, deep and cold. This is the Human Federation. Open your doors, surrender. The anomaly and no harm will come. Remain silent, and you will be treated as enemies. She looked at the man. He looked back, not with fear, but with something sad, something final. He said, they lie, they always lie. She said, then we do not answer. He nodded and lifted his device, pressed a button, and the lights in the house went dark, completely dark. Pod doors below began to rise one by one, the sound of air escaping, the sound of time. Waking up, she ran to the basement, helped lift the children out. 1, 2, 3 small bodies, weak but breathing real, tears for the first time. She handed one to the man, one to her back, and carried one in her arms, her child beside her, walking on his own, his face glowing with strength and silence. They moved through the escape hatch behind the house, into the forest, into the breath of night, into a silence deeper than anything above ground. The man pressed another device, and behind them, the house burned, not with fire, but with light, erasing data, hiding names. destroying everything they left behind, except the truth. They ran for hours, maybe more, maybe less time. Had no voice in the woods, only footsteps, only the beating of 5 small hearts against the wind. They reached a cave covered in roots and stone. The entrance marked by an old sign, a place forgotten, a place safe for now, he said. This is where they rest until the next path opens. She asked how long, he said, as long as it takes. She laid the children down, wrapped them in blankets, covered them with earth and warmth. Her child lay beside her, hand in her hair, breath on her neck. She turned to the man and asked, what happens if they find us here? He looked at her and said, then we fight, then we protect them with everything we have left. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, not to dream, but to listen to the silence of survival, the sound of choices made, and the sound of a future still breathing beneath the ground. The cave was dark, but warm. The earth held them like a promise. Her child slept against her chest, his hand curled in her hair, his light soft like stars behind clouds. The other children rested near, covered in blankets made from old cloth and kindness. The silence around them, not empty, but full like the breath of the world waiting to begin again. Man stood near the entrance, not sleeping, not speaking, only watching the forest through a small crack in the rock, his body still, his weapon ready. Not from fear, but from duty, the kind of duty that does not fade even when no one asks for it anymore. She rose slowly, careful not to wake the children, her feet bare, her movements quiet. She walked to him and stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder. No words between them for a while, just breath and memory, and the shape of choices made in fire. She whispered, will they come again? He said, yes, not now, but someday. They will always come for what they do not control. She asked, and what will we do? Then he said, we will stand, or we will run, or we will break, but we will not give them the children, not while we breathe. She looked at him, really looked at the lines on his face, the weight in his eyes, the silence in his voice, and she knew he had once carried a name full of medals and orders and ranks, but now he only carried the past like a scar pressed deep into his soul. He gave her a small device wrapped in cloth inside. It were recordings of the children, their names, their stories, their medical scans, their last known families, their last known homes. Most had no one left, no place left, but their names mattered, and he had kept them all. He said, if I do not make it, you must take this to the last station. There is one contact left, a woman who remembers what peace looked like. She will help, she will hide you if she can. If not, she will tell the truth. Held the device like it was fire and said, you speak like someone who knows he will not make it. He looked at her and said, speak like someone who wants you to. They spent the day preparing again, packing water, sealing food, waking one of the pods at a time, slowly, carefully, gently. The children were confused, scared, tired, but safe. She sang to them songs from her world, soft sounds with no words, songs that felt like sun through leaves, songs that made even the cold cave feel like home. Night, they saw the signal in the sky, not loud, not big, a blink of silver above the trees, like a mirror catching the moon just once. The man stood up, checked his weapon, looked at her, and said, they found the ruin, not this place, not yet, but close. She nodded, her hand steady, her mind clear. Her child looked up at her and said, are we leaving again? She knelt down, kissed his head, and said, not yet, maybe not ever, if we are lucky. But luck was rare, now not gone, just quiet, just hiding. They set out before dawn, walking through the forest, the air thick with fog, the sound of their feet soft on the leaves, the man leading her in the way. Middle children between them like stars in a line, the light of her child keeping them warm. They reached the edge of an old road, cracked and broken, trees growing through it. The man stopped, placed his hand on a tree, and whispered something like a name, then turned to her and said, the ship is 2 days from here, underground, buried near a forgotten town, old tech, but fast enough. She said, how do you know? He said, because I helped build it, before I changed sides, before I stopped following orders, before I learned what saving really meant. That night as they rested beside a broken tower, she asked him one more question. Why, yes, why me? Why did you stop for me on that street when no one else did? He looked at the fire and said, because I saw your child and I remembered mine, and I saw you and I remembered who I used to be. She touched his shoulder, not for comfort, but for thanks, the kind of thanks that lives in silence. the kind that never fades. They reached the ship 2 days later, hidden beneath stone and silence, powered by hope and forgotten systems. She helped him load the children into the small cabins, helped him check the wires, helped him breathe. But the signal came again, louder this time, closer this time. Real, they had been found, not all of them, not yet. But him, the scan caught his signature, his name still marked as defected traitor enemy. He looked at her once last time, pressed a code into the wall, gave her the keys to the ship and said, "Take them now, I will hold them here long. Enough for you to vanish." She shook her head, grabbed his hand, said, "There must be another way." He said, "Not this time, not today." He stepped outside while the ship doors closed. Her child screamed, her heart broke. The engines roared, the forest shook, but she did not look back. The ship rose quietly, cut through the clouds like a dream, like a memory flying towards something better. Not perfect, not promised, but possible. She watched the earth below her, watched it turn, watched it fade, and whispered to the stars, "He gave us food, he gave us warmth, he gave us time, but more than anything, he gave us something no one else ever did. He gave us a future."